Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds, I'm Nerdarchists Dave. Tonight I'm hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchists Ted, how are you doing this fine and lovely evening, sir?
I'm doing awesome. Campaign-specific threats for D&D and other TTRPGs, Zoo Mafia.
This is one that's a lot of fun because you've got the ability to take Zoo Mafia in a lot of different directions when you start talking about threats. It's set up of like, all right, even though you can do a lot of awesome role-playing, you can do a lot of exposition on the places and things. And Zoo Mafia is really about doing crime, doing violence. You are out there and some people are going to die.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you're not prepared to accept that fact, and you're probably not looking at Zoo Mafia under the lens that we really are writing it from.
I would say there's 3 prongs of threat when it comes to Zoo Mafia.
All right. What are the 3 prongs?
So first and foremost is the humans, right? Because you can't let the humans know you do non-animal things. The humans are a very difficult kind of threat to deal with because there's a huge mechanical penalty for ever having humans just catch you doing people stuff, right? You lose half your markers. And if you lose all your markers, you're out of the game. So like when you get caught, you automatically just lose half your markers. And we've had that happen once so far. But then the other problem is like, unlike some of the other threats in the game, you can't just beat your way out of this one, right? Because it's almost like meta style threat, right? It's not just the fact that the humans are in the game, but also they're into this nebulous thing that just causes more suspicion on your characters as you do more things to kind of get caught by them, right? So, and also, even if you go all animal and attack a human, that's also going to go very badly for you because then they're not going to keep you in the zoo. They'd want to probably euthanize you at that point, unfortunately. So the humans are a very specific and particular threat that can't just be overcome by violence.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that, and again, I'm running a game now that the human element has been removed. And when we design the game, there's the element of you choose how you want to play it. But if you want the human threat, if you want this very heavy brush when it's necessary, this layer of challenge, but it's a lot of fun to have to dance around and deal with or not deal with the humans.
So number 2 is law enforcement, right? And I feel like law enforcement can come in like 3 varieties, maybe 4, right? It could be your hired security, your mall cops, right? They're not really law enforcement per se, but they're security. The next is they either could work privately or they could work alongside law enforcement, or they could even work for the other side. And I would say that's like PIs, private investigator, which we haven't used, but it very fits with the setting and the time period pretty well. Then you have the police. You have regular local law enforcement, flat paws. And then you have the feds, right? That's the claw patrol. So you have these different elements of law enforcement that you have to deal with. And the thing is, again, you can shoot your way out. You can use violence to get out of it. But at the end of the day, the worse you do, the worse you're going to make it on yourself and the rest of the crime world, really, because you're just going to bring down more and more heat.
So like when you started saying, okay, there's these different segments, my brain was looking at it in a different direction because it's like, okay, with your police officers, we're taking it from the concept of this 1920s, 1930s era where you never know what kind of loyalty these cops have. So you've got cops that are true to form. They care about the law. They're trying to enforce it. They're going to bring down punishment upon those that are like you, breaking the law. You're going to have those that are on the take. And it's like, well, for the right incentive, I can look the other way. And then you got those that are kind of in the middle of, you don't really know, so how are you going to play it? So I like that aspect of these police officers to every interaction. I was like, okay, how are the players going to interact? What are they going to do? Are they going to attempt to bribe? Are they going to attempt to glean more information? I like using that component of it, not as a slight on how things are today, but how it was back then and now in this fictitious world.
And then our final area is criminals, other criminals like yourself, right? They're probably 90% of what you're going to encounter as the threat when you play Zoo Mafia, as you're going to war with other gangs. And also, that's a lot more safe. That's a lot safer than going to war with law enforcement, because law enforcement isn't going to care as much if the casualties are kept to criminals and other criminals. But when it starts hitting their own ranks and the citizens, then it becomes a bigger deal.
Yeah. And that's another one that could also be stretched of like, okay, well, if you kill a cop, if it's just one cop that you kill and therefore they don't know who did it, who is the cops gonna come after? They're gonna bring it down on a lot of criminals, sure, but they don't know who to come after. Whereas, like, all right, you get into a beef with Al Capone, chances are they're going to figure out who done it and they're going to come after you, which is escalation that the game is known to be able to have happen. And I'm here for it. It's a lot of fun to get in and play. But so sometimes you have to figure out, like, what kind of paintbrush are you using here? How are you highlighting these characters or those characters?
For me, part of the fun as a zookeeper, the person that runs the game, is being able to switch it up, right? Like this week's session, it's other criminals. That next week, maybe it's the cops, and a week after that, they bring in the feds. Or maybe your group ends up in an unhoused encampment of humans trying to find their way through to find, someone that's hiding in there from the criminal world, right? So these are all things that can happen throughout the course of a campaign, and it helps keep it fresh too, right? Like also the types of humans you interact with could change things up a lot. You had an interaction where you're playing a gorilla and he was kind of wearing an overcoat and stuff. So for a bit, he was passing himself off as a human. I forget what Sammy the Snake did, but he did something that definitely gave himself away as an animal, and that was the first time we've seen that the half of the markers being lost.
Yeah, it's tough when that situation happens, but it's how the dice roll. It's how the decisions that we make as players, and you gotta learn to live with them.
So I think that covers the threats to Zoo Mafia as well. So next time, stay nerdy.